Welcome back. Yeah, welcome back. Hope everything's good with you and hope you're doing wonderful and everything like that. Oh man, I just feel like taking a breath of air as we get started here, looking at that slide. Because today for me is actually maybe it feels like for me today feels like it feels for you sometime. When you attempt, you attempt, you attempt, and you attempt, and you attempt, and you attempt, and then things kind of go wrong. So what am I saying? Um, I tell you, I was just ready to get into this particular session because this is an exciting session. I feel because there's a lot of tools that I'm going to be sharing with you, and the tools are what really makes the journey possible and makes the journey smooth, makes the journey simpler, makes the journey something that you can control. And in full disclosure, again, I don't script. This particular course isn't scripted, it's outlined, but it's not scripted. So, I'm all ready and all geared up, all prepped, ready to just jump in and dive in. And so when I turn my camera on, I get this update message. And so, it seems like some new features in the camera. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, new features. Let me try them. Maybe I'll make my presentation a little bit better. So here's a warning, folks, because we pay attention and we learn from life, and that's what we do. If you're getting ready to do a presentation, don't change anything because basically, long story shortened, it took about an hour for whatever reason. That new software didn't want to adjust, it kept getting stuck. And actually, the new software has a little bit different interface that I'm not familiar with. Fortunately, I'm not going to have to adjust it during this presentation any. But yeah, don't. Sometimes it's better not to fool with stuff when you're in the middle of something. And I would tie that into what we're doing here, which is if you're on a plan, don't come up with a new plan right in the middle of doing the dance because you're going to mess the whole thing up. And I got to tell you, fixing this and fixing that and putting this back together, it's like all of the energy that I had for this presentation is like gone. And so the same thing happens to you sometimes when you do the recovery thing the wrong way and you end up finding yourself on the wrong path. It's almost like you're so tired, why do it? And fortunately, I have enough motivation and enough commitment to keep going. But yeah, I feel like right now that I've already done a seminar by trying to figure out what was wrong with the camera, and I didn't need to figure it out. And that's, this is one of these things that is part of this road, man. You don't have to be curious about everything, and you don't have to jump on every shiny object, because this is one of the things that you have to tone down. But it is what it is, and I just wanted to share that with you as we get started. I know that I'm going to warm up because of the fact, if you look at, hopefully you were looking at this as I was talking. And so now today we're actually at coping strategies. And so this is an area where, those are the things that make life easy. In other words, like when I go back and I think about some of these people in some of these forums that I've read about, talked about, shared about, and they're sitting there and their quit strategy is basically, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm just going to fight and fight and fight. There's no strategy except for fight. And then the only other strategy is, okay, I'm going to share this with the group. Okay, well, what is that? That's another lie to make yourself feel like you're doing something, and then nothing gets done. But the thing that we're talking about today is way different than that. Hold your breath, count days, do a cold shower. Don't change your pornified mindset. Don't dispense with your addictive behavior. Don't change your identity. You know, again, the program that doesn't work. Program that works is when you do all of these wonderful things all at once. And one of the tools today that we're going to learn about is coping strategies. Now, I'm going to just, let you take a journey back in the past. A couple of sessions back, we talked about boundaries. And so, you have to think about boundaries because boundaries do a lot of your heavy lifting for you. You have to remember these periods here because these are your vulnerable periods. You have to avoid people who make you feel bad and make you compromise your values and what it is that you want. Social media really is a dangerous place. You being at home by yourself is a dangerous place. You need to learn how to manage these situations better because it's in managing these situations better that you get better. And the part of the holding your breath and waiting around and all of that, that's part of the pornified clowned mindset, which is basically let's make ourselves feel like we're doing something so we don't have to do anything. And as a result of we didn't do anything, we don't get better. But because we think that we did something, we feel a little bit better about the situation until we get into the rinse and repeat situation, which is when we act out and then we feel very terrible and call ourselves all kinds of names. So you need to not take dangerous people, places, and things lightly because this is actually a tool. See, one of the things that I try to tell people is like you want to put yourself in a position where as life goes by in a given day, you're tempted about 10 times, right? That's a better place to fight than if you are not mindful of any of this stuff that's here, stuff that's not here, and on and on and on. And then you find yourself tempted 5,000 times in a day. See, it doesn't take rocket science to figure out if you have to make 5,000 decisions about what you don't want to do, it's not rocket science. It's very likely that one of them's not going to be a good decision. So if you can create boundaries and put yourself in safe, supportive environments, what you'll find, and this is a metaphor, is that you're not being tempted as much. And as a result of not being tempted as much, you can actually pursue the journey faster. And that's what you want. You want fast because right now you're in an addictive mind and you want everything fast. So the way that you get things faster is you position yourself in places that are supportive to what it is that you want, and then you avoid the places that are unsupportive to what you want. Plain and simple. Okay? Okay. So, once again, this is the war that we're dealing with. The daily habits do add up. You've been engaged in this experiment called PMO for however long it is. We just use this as a benchmark, 10 years. Could have been 20 years. It could have been 40 years. That gives you an idea. And it's not just an hour. Some people it's more than an hour. Some people it's less than an hour. But this is a framework of something where you see what it is that you're trying to beat. And the deal is this. I'll say it over and over again. Each PMO session that you engaged in, you effectively put a brick and you built a stairway of toxicity. And see, the thing is, you can't hope and pray or wish that this stairway of toxicity that you laid down and that you also put the glue in and the cement to hold these bricks in place. You cannot expect one little act to tear these down. The process of recovery is pulling these bricks out one by one. And in some cases, you may be able to pull out a handful, That's what it's about. Anything less than that, you get a nice benefit. You get a real nice benefit. And the real nice benefit is you get what addiction is, and you get how it feels, and you get to talk to yourself the way that you talk to yourself. And you know as well as I do, it's not very flattering. Now, would you move? Yeah, get off. Oh, yay! I'm sure you feel yay too. So, the rubber band is actually a tool that we use. And it's a behavior modification device. I would invite you to get one in your early days. It's not meant to be some sadistic device to hurt yourself, but it's meant to be something you just put on your arm and pop it so that you knock yourself back into shape. I don't use rubber bands right now because I don't have any reason to have a rubber band on my arm all the time. But at the time that I did, I had rubber bands all over the place. And so that's a good device. Let's see what that next slide says. Yeah. You can read faster than I can talk, so go for it. Rubber bands are very good, but again, it's not a way for you to beat up and be mean. It's really like a little minor shock. It's kind of like I live not next to a farm and there's some barbed wire that's got electricity on it to keep the cows from running away and to keep me from getting too close to the cows. But it's not going to, cause massive damage, but it'll cause enough damage for me to know, stay away from that fence. So one of the things that we're going to talk about throughout the session, but one of the things I'm going to stop just for a second right now and talk about is the power of your decisions. And so most people have no idea of the power of the decisions. And I would say that the decisions shape destinies. I would say that somewhere along the line, if you're 30 years old or 40 years old and not of the youth group that I'm talking to, you could sit here and tell me right now that there was a decision that you made and you're so glad that you made it because it changed the trajectory of your life. And I can guarantee you can tell me that there's a decision that you made or you didn't make that changed the trajectory of your life tremendously over the last 10 years. It made you an entirely different person. And that's the power of decisions. Decisions shape destinies. And if you look at the word decision, there's a clue, C-I-S-O-N. That means to cut off. And that means to cut off what you had before. So when you truly make a decision, you have a brand new destiny because what you had before gets cut off. And that's the power of decision. And a lot of people take decisions lightly. And so I'm encouraging you, as I said before, this really is a growth process. And this is a life skills workshop in addition to a recovery workshop. And you need to embrace the power of decision because decisions change your life and decisions make your day. Oh, what is that? SUD. SUD. Now, S-U-D. See, what you do when you're faced with a decision that counts many times, that's really going to change the trajectory of your situation. And again, every decision counts, as I've already just established. But what you do many times to make it so that you don't have to make a decision, make it so that you don't have to make the right decision, is you make the decision seem like it's unimportant, seemingly unimportant decisions. See, if you heard what I just finished saying, you understand there is no SUDs. There is no seemingly unimportant decisions because every decision points you into a different direction. Every decision takes you to a different place. So the idea that a decision has no consequence is an idea that really is, how should I say it and be nice? It's the kind of idea that would come out of the mind of somebody that was addicted to pornography. There's no such thing as an unimportant decision. It's just some decisions have greater consequence than others. But there's no important decision that's unimportant, because when you make decisions unimportant, then they all become unimportant. And when they all become unimportant, then you have no idea of the consequences of your decisions. One of the first decisions that you can make every single day, as I said before, is to not hit your snooze button. The second most important good decision that you can make is to just delay putting the phone in your hand. And that's a process that right now you have no mastery of your morning. What you do feeds how your day turns out. And basically, you're on a path that feeds toxicity. I could do a whole seminar on mastering your morning, so I'm not going to do that. But it's a very, very important component, because the first thing people do is look at this. First thing you do, you hit the snooze button 5 times. Then after you hit the snooze button 5 times, you open something randomly. Then after you open something randomly, then you have some kind of PMO experience. Is that mastering your morning? And the answer to the question is obviously no, it isn't. So part of the reboot program, if you will, getting better, is awareness. Awareness. And that's really that's a big deal, because see, it's the lack of awareness that makes it easy for you not to see the consequences of some of the decisions that we make. So one of the things you're always going to find whenever there's toxicity is that there's unconsciousness and lack of awareness, because that's toxicity's friend. Is as long as you can be scattered and not know what you're doing, toxicity can come in. It's kind of like the idle mind is the devil's workshop. Yeah, same deal. So you become aware, you create stabilization. Part of that comes through planning, and then you grow. And so again, this is a war on randomness. You don't decide at 10 p.m. what it is you're going to do. And even if you decide at 10 p.m., even if you think you're deciding at 10 p.m., you didn't really decide at 10 p.m. You decided at 10 a.m. You decided when you put that phone in your hand what was going to happen at 10 p.m. The problem is you don't realize it right now. And some of you, one of the things I'll take a moment to talk about for a second, some of you have had streaks, which, that's a bad word in my vocabulary, but just for the sake of talking about it, some of you have had streaks, 100-day streaks, year streaks, month streaks. And then all of a sudden, after you have this streak, one day all of a sudden you find you relapse. And you can't figure it out. And one of the reasons that happened was you had no planning, and you were random last week, and you were doing things last week, and you weren't paying attention last week, and you were tempting yourself last week, and then it manifested itself this week. So you might want to pay attention to those relapse periods, because the relapse doesn't really occur today. It actually occurred yesterday and the week before. Again, the same old thing. Don't use your phone as a toy. It's a tool for greatness. Porn's not real life. It develops you and causes you to become a person of artificialness and fantasy, seeking visual relief, which is an illusion. And again, just reminding you of your boundaries, because boundaries do all the heavy lifting for you. One boundary is equal to 5,000 good decisions. We've already told you, each decision changes the trajectory of your life. You make a bunch of big decisions and they stack on top of another, and all of a sudden the trajectory of your life changes and magnificent stuff happens. So one of the tools you use for boundaries is you use a traffic light in your mind, just like you drive. I told you before, in some states, yellow light means stop. It doesn't mean speed up and try to get through before it turns red. So you look at your behaviors, look at your stress moments, you look at situations where they're not safe situations. Yellow is dangerous people, dangerous things. And so when you find yourself in this yellow area, you ask yourself questions to get yourself back in the green area, because you can't get into the red area without going in the yellow area first. So if you can stop yourself in the yellow area, red doesn't happen. In some of the yellow areas, you're pushed by default. You're pushed because of your behavior. In yellow areas or when you're bored. You have to come up with something to do when you're bored, when you're hungry. You have to come up with something to do when you're angry. You have to regulate yourself. People have a tendency to take their anger out on them in the way that we're talking about. When you're lonely and when you feel sad and lonely, these are times that you're vulnerable. You have to come up with a strategy to handle these times. This S also stands for stress. I've often said, especially once you get to a point where you have sobriety, I don't like to count days and stuff like that, but when you get away from it for like a month or two, your biggest enemies are going to be your stress and boredom. So you need to have plans for those, and that comes with keeping yourself busy, having more to do than you're able to do. Not like because you're stressed, you just have it there so that you don't have to think about what is your next move, what is your next right move. So gratitude is an area that I would suggest that you bring into your morning routine. Not only just bring it into your morning routine, but also practice it throughout the day. That's a strength and that's a power, and there's a tremendous amount to be thankful for. I shared it last time. I'll share it every time that slide comes up. You cannot have a negative emotion and be thankful at the same time. There's it's just one of those things. Like you can be excited about hitting the lottery and feel a pain at the same time, right? But you can't be thankful that you won the lottery. Total gratitude collapses everything. And if you learn to use gratitude, gratitude can actually be your friend for the reasons I mentioned. If I'm thankful for where I am, I'm so happy that I'm breathing. I'm happy that I can look out my window there. There's some horses. Oh, horses aren't out there today. But anyway, most days I can look out there and there's horses. If you're in the moment totally of gratitude, it's impossible to feel terrible. The problem is you when you're feeling terrible, you're not in a total moment of gratitude. And that's a clue that you're not in a total moment of gratitude. But when you're in a total moment of gratitude, it doesn't happen. You can't have a negative emotion. So I'm going to remind you over and over again, this is a journey, it's a road, and it's not a race. And most people, especially in the 21st century, are very instant oriented, and they want it like that. I get it. But see, even worse so is that when people become addicted, that what I just finished saying, it's 10x. So they want it so much more faster. And so it's not a race. And see, that's why that silliness that those people are doing, counting days, is silly, because it's making it a race. It's a road. It's a journey of getting better. Willpower never works. Willpower is what you want to try. You know, anybody who doesn't finish this workshop is somebody that convinced themselves, I'll use one or two of those tools. I'm going to just go ahead and default to my old buddy here, willpower. It'll never work because it's a muscle. And just like a muscle, if you stress it too much, it's going to break. And just like a battery, if I left my lights on, It's going to wear out, and it won't start the car. You're not alone. Now, we talked about this last session, and this is where everything's cool in the gang in your body usually. But then something happens and you get aroused and you get stimulated, as you can see here. This is the stress area that happens for people. Anxiety, they pop in here, ooh, ooh. And then the other, they call it hypoarousal. And that's when you go down. That's when you want to isolate. Something happens that bounces you to isolate. Boom, 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 boom. All right, you chill. Something happens. Depression. All right. So the normal person lives here until something happens. But here's what I told you before. The person who's a porn addict, his window of tolerance, you have to use your imagination because I don't have a slide here. His window of tolerance is a third the size of an average person. And every time he bounces into one of these zones, he wants to self-soothe. You see why it's so hard? Because your area here is smaller than the average person. And your need to self-soothe is bigger than the average person. So normal life is going to cause you to self-soothe. And it's an endless loop. So what has to happen is through the processes, through your rewiring of yourself, your window of tolerance, gets bigger, and you have strategies to deal with when you get hyper-aroused or when you get hypo-aroused. So one thing on this slide that's a big deal is like, get rid of your perfectionism. This really gets in the way of people in this recovery journey. They want to have it all or nothing and have it work perfectly. It's nice that it would work perfectly, but a lot of times it doesn't work perfectly because of the simple fact that it's a complicated matter. And secondly, have you ever thought about how do you get to perfect on anything? Is that something that you've ever thought about? Because even if, I'm not encouraging perfection, but if you wanted to study perfection, if you really wanted to create perfection, you know how you create perfection? The way that most people, I've never seen perfection created any other way, except for the fact that you fail and you flaw and you adjust and you learn how to create perfection. So even if you're chasing perfection, which I'm not encouraging you to chase, the only way that you would ever get it is by being imperfect. And that's part of, man, wow. If you had any idea of the power of your words, you would watch every last one of them. Fortunately, in my growing up, I was able to read books and learn from some of the greatest teachers on the planet. And some of the books I read, they over and over and over again, they either had a title in the book or the book itself was about every single word that you make or say matters. Every last one of them. And you'll find that again in James that, he talks about the power of the tongue, and he also says something that it talks about how words are actually a seed. And so your words are actual seeds. And so what are your words? I mean, only you know. And so one of the things that we find is that if you picked apart your language, you would find that you have an addictive vocabulary. And then after you act out in your addiction, then you use more addictive language. And then even when nothing's going on, you use addictive language. and then addiction shows up in your life. And so what you will find is if you keep using that word called recovery and then do the things of recovery, and recovery becomes like your favorite word, you'd be surprised. Recovery will show up in your life and show up in your experience. And, you know, my assistant just threw slides in and I didn't change them so much. So this is an area that, again, part of recovering from pornography is also not only changing behaviors, but pornography use does damage to your soul, your mind, and your spirit. And it does damage that will not get repaired unless it gets repaired. It's not going to automatically repair it. Some of it does repair itself automatically because your mindset changes. And then some of it repairs itself because you pay attention. But one of the components that does come with heavy duty porn use is how you treat people. And as a matter of fact, it's such a selfish act that how you treat people becomes really less important, and life is about how you treat yourself. And because of the images and because of the suggestions repetitively that people consume through the pornography process, it's not a good picture of how women are supposed to be treated. And as a result, people have some serious gaps, for lack of a better term, in how they treat women. So that's an area to pay attention to. Another area that porn damages is it damages people's sense of justice. And I'm not going to go into all of what do you mean by sense of justice. So you can figure that out for yourself or look it up. But it does distort people's sense of justice. And that's an area just like lying less. People's sense of justice increases the farther that they are away from porn. It's an interesting thing. These are questions that give you power. I'm not asking you how many lifetime hours you put in because it's some fun thing. But if you really understand and really embrace how much time you've actually wasted doing porn, you will find that you can use, that'll give you the power and the leverage to do something about your porn use. And so let me say it in a different way. You know, when you look at 3,500 hours as a whole, 3,500 hours, think about how many different certifications you could have got. You could have got certified for computers. You could have got certified for this. You could have got certified for that. You could have got certified to do this. You might be able to have gotten this degree. 3,500 hours or whatever I said it was. It's a lot. 3,500 hours in 10 years. That's a lot. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some common triggers, and then we're going to come up with some management strategies as well. Because that's what you haven't learned how to do. And so basically, that's why you need to actually take the time to learn it. Because basically, something happens, you get uncomfortable. I wish I had the addictive cycle screen right now. It'd be perfect to show right here. I think I'm going to find it somewhere else and pull it up for you just for the fun of it. So anyway, something happens, you get uncomfortable, and then you self-soothe. And that's basically what happens. And so what you need to learn how to do is you need to learn how to teach yourself a different strategy than the one that you do, which is something uncomfortable happens and then you jump and get yourself caught up in the addictive cycle. And so trigger management and coping strategies is something that will help you in that endeavor. I'll pull up that in a second. So let's talk about them. How are we going to use this trigger map? Well, one of the first things that you can do to use the trigger map is to recognize your specific areas of vulnerability, because everybody's got certain areas that they're vulnerable. Your areas and somebody else's areas are different. So as you find your vulnerable areas, what you need to do is come up with a strategy so that they lose their power. In other words, there's something that you can do, and you'll see the pattern in a second. So there's different kinds of triggers, first of all. And one of the kind of trigger is emotional triggers. Now, as you see, and you compare that to that slide that I showed you a couple steps back, this is when you, this stuff here is a lot of that. This here is hypostimulation, and this here is hyper arousal, hypo arousal here. So you have to have strategies in place to cause yourself to shift immediately, because the shift won't happen on its own. As a matter of fact, once the shift happens, it'll continue to go into the direction until something interrupts it. And a lot of times in your case, the only interruption is going to be something else in the addictive cycle. Now, just like you have emotional triggers, you have physical triggers. Your body triggers you. When people are fatigued and they wake up in the middle of the night, that's a trigger for people. When people are hungry, that's a trigger for people. When people get intoxicated and they lay their inhibitions down, that's a trigger for people. When people have physical pain and they want some kind of escape, that's a trigger for people. And what has happened in the addict's life, unfortunately, is for every trigger, he's got a solution. Now, environments themselves can actually be triggering. And that's why you have to have environmental management. Some people being home alone, that's a trigger. Well, even when you're home alone, you can create quality people that you can reach out to. See, I wouldn't, somebody else would say, oh, yeah, just reach out. No. Don't just reach out. Reach out where it's quality. And then you can have a quality conversation, and being home alone is not so triggering. This is the same thing here, same thing here, same thing here pretty much. Because remember what I said? Remember what I said is the gasoline for toxicity? Opportunity. So if you're doing private browsing, that's a good clue. That's an addict behavior. You got to knock it out. You know why you're doing it. Real simple. Social media scrolling, all this stuff is triggers. If you see a flash of this, that's why sometimes it's good to have your Google on safe search. And you got devices other places that you don't know, so that you can go to it. Media and image triggers. You can read that as I'm talking. We talked about this before. Like most of our movies that we don't watch movies so live. We watch them on certain movie platforms. I'm not going to advertise free for anybody today. But I have a rule with this, and you could take this rule on. And this is a rule that, this is an area where I'm going to tell you straight up, if you can't do this, then you deserve to stay chained up. And that is this. This is a small thing. But seriously, I say it this way because if you don't do this, then what you're doing is you're telling yourself a lie that it's not important. And that is not the only lie that you're telling yourself. And that's why I say you deserve what it is that you're getting, because you can't tell any lies and get away with it anymore. That's not a strategy that works anymore. So when it comes to movies, if I'm watching a movie and let's say there's a sex scene in there, or anything that I feel is toxic, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But we'll call sex scene for the sake of the example. I got a 4-click rule, and that's basically, first of all, I got a boundary. I don't play it. You can keep on. I don't play it. All right. I got standards for how I'm operating. So basically, if something crosses a boundary, then basically, okay, it crossed the boundary, and I just speed up the movie to the next scene. Okay, cool. And then I go on about my business. If it happens again, I just speed it on up. If it happens again, I just speed it on up. When it's time to speed it up again, the next time, it goes off. No questions asked. I don't even negotiate with myself. There's nothing on there that I need to look at. And here's why. Because I've taken the time to pay attention, to pull out my notebook, to really reflect about this recovery process and say, look, if I need to speed my video up more than 4 times, this movie is toxic. There's no reason in the world that I need to convince myself through lies that I need to see this movie. And that's all it is to it. It's nothing to get excited about, nothing to do any of that. It's you made a movie that I need to forward 4 times, and because you made a movie that I need to speed up 4 times, you made a movie that I'm not going to watch. We talked about this early in the game. This is an area of grow up for you, and for me too, as a matter of fact. Yeah, you're going to find that your dirty jokes will go down as well as you begin to clean up your act. And that's an area where you can actually take, this is something you can do. That, this is a behavior that you can, a micro behavior that you can just grab right now. It's not hard to not do that. But by not doing that, you're actually growing. And also by not accepting somebody telling you that, you're actually growing. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm not really interested in hearing that kind of commentary at this moment. Thank you very much. I'm just not interested in hearing that type of banter, that type of commentary. I'm not interested in hearing locker room jokes, as the president would say. So this is stuff that it's interesting. People get triggered because of the fact that they don't do the recovery. Just not doing the recovery. As we said, doing the recovery takes stuff. It takes going to meetings. It takes talking to people. It takes looking at podcasts. It takes going to seminars. It takes doing courses like this. It takes reading books. It's a process that you continue to do. If you're not going to do it, then basically your recovery is going to suffer. You have to do these things continuously, because what you're doing is you're reversing the process. You didn't stop when it came to you looking at porn every day. You didn't say, oh, this is too much for me to do. Oh, I don't want to do this stuff. So that's the only way that you're going to get out of this thing, man, is that you're going to work it, and you're not going to take anything for granted. Now, again, these are areas to pay attention, because they really are triggers. And I was looking at this one here. This one caught my eye, because this one is one that you really might want to get in check for everything. Because the one thing about this day is that for some reason this day gives you permission to hijack your brain with this word that's a destined trouble word. And that is entitlement. See, you got paid today. You feel you're entitled to do some stuff. Anytime you feel you're entitled, buddy, the next decision that you make is probably not going to be your best decision. Because the entitlement itself it's like putting a blindfold over your eye. So here's your response plan. Spot the trigger, man. Block the trigger and replace it with something else, and review what you did. Spot the trigger, block the trigger, replace the trigger with something positive, and review what you did. All right. So these are techniques. This stuff, I think it's 100 things, man. You got to do this all the time. This stuff you got to do without even thinking. You got to remember, you got to do something on purpose 1,000 times so that you do it automatically without thinking. And this is what you need to get to the point where you're conscious. You got to go to get to conscious competence. And then from conscious competence to unconscious competence. And unconscious competence can only happen by doing certain things conscious long enough that they become unconscious. So we talked about it before. And again, some of the things that we talk about, you've heard before. Don't tell me, don't even give yourself permission to think, oh, I've heard this stuff before. Okay? Look, if you're doing porn, my friend, and you heard this stuff before, I'll give you a clue. You haven't heard enough of this stuff. Okay? It's just that simple. That's one. But the other is you're not doing any of this stuff that you heard before. So you're going to hear this stuff that you heard before probably again, and that's because you watch porn over and over and over again. And so get over it. It's part of the process. And you need to tell yourself the same old thing over and over again. You might not want to think that you only need to tell yourself something once. And you might not want to think that you only need to hear something once, because some stuff you need to hear tons of times, because that's the only way that you're going to break those bricks down that you've built up in that stairwell of toxicity. So again, delay. Just get up out of the room, man. Train yourself. Everything that we're talking about is a muscle. You're in the gym. This is a gym. This is a gym called recovery. You've got to practice these exercises constantly, and then they become second nature. Get off the bed. Get off the bed. Get off the bed and get out of the room. Wash your hands. Make a sandwich. Put the phone in another room. Don't use the phone as an alarm clock. Turn the lights on. Go where people are. Learn to take 10 slow breaths. Learn to take 10 deep breaths. I've talked about this before. Wash your face. Do squats. You can read faster than I can. Reach out to people. And again, you can read faster than I. Call an accountability person. That might be a little challenging for you. But like if you called your parents and you told them what was up, I'm telling you, that's a big step, because you've actually taken yourself from isolation of the matter, and you've brought it to the public. And it's a confession is what it is. And one of the things that happens with a confession is that it opens a gateway. As long as it's locked up, it's stored in a box. When you confess, you open the box. And with an open box, you can come out and escape. Device reset. This is okay as a tool, but this is some people, this is their recovery strategy, and that ain't gonna work. And I hope that you've heard enough that you would never even think of this as a strategy. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the years. I've talked to wives of addicted people, and I've talked to people, oh yeah, I got him a blocker. He got 5 days. I got him a blocker. Man, you telling me you got a blocker? I mean, it's almost like the best tickler times 5 tickling me as hard as they can. I got a blocker. That's how much I want to laugh when somebody, I got him a blocker. I got a blocker. Come on, man. That's not a strategy. This is one of the biggest addictions that has ever hit the planet. And somebody thinks that they're gonna get some kind of software that they pay $15 a month for, and somehow that's gonna eradicate it. It's not gonna eradicate it. So please, a blocker is a tool, but it's not everything. But if you want a blocker, just type up covenanteyes.com and then /Coach J, and then they'll give you $1 off. They will. I have an affiliate link. covenanteyes.com /Coach J, and they'll give you $1 off the monthly subscription. All right. Yeah, unfollow the accounts. Put your charger outside of the room. I don't know why my assistant put that in there. I guess that would be if you use your phone to the extent that it burns out, then you're done. However that may be. And this number 40 is a big deal. Again, you got a phone problem. Again, you got a phone problem. Again, you got a phone problem. So don't take the phone in the bathroom. Don't take the phone in the bathroom. There's no reason to take the phone in the bathroom. I mean, when you're in your house. Obviously, if it's in your pocket, it's in your pocket. So don't take the phone in the bathroom means don't pull the phone out in the bathroom. Hard boundaries, babes. That's what it takes. Hard boundaries. And that's what I mean, like when your yellow lights are yellow lights, that's a hard boundary. When I hit yellow, I got to stop. Look, I talked about this last time. I just want to test it. I want to test it. I just had to test it. I just wanted to test it. There's nothing to test. There's nothing to test because testing is randomness. This is a journey of deliberateness. This is a journey of mastery. This is a journey of maturity, and this is a journey of self-control. So there's no need for any randomness, and that's why there's no need for. The reason why it took me five extra months to get through this process because I just wanted to test it. I wanted to test it. No, we don't have any time for that. You don't need to test anything. So again, things that you can do as coping mechanisms, things that you can do to respond to your triggers is actions. These are things that you can do to respond to your triggers. And my favorite, obviously, is read a book. Read a book about something that's going to make you a better person. And right now, specifically, it's about behavior modification and developing a greater mindset. One of the first books that I read as I was going through this journey was a book by Covenant Eyes. I would suggest that you get it. And actually, Covenant Eyes has a few. I think they have like 10 free books, and they're like 130 pages, PDFs. I don't think they're all 130, 90, 70, 80, something like that. But man, the book that I read was called Hobbies and Habits. And that's such a foundational part of the change for somebody recovering. Because what is porn use? It's an unhealthy way to meet needs. It's an unhealthy way to create fulfillment. And so when you deliberately develop a bunch of new habits, you have inherently added a bunch of new things that will create fulfillment for you. And so that's why it's good to develop new habits. And also, I would take a look at my life, because one of the things that we know is that if I'm talking to the adults now, and even just a small amount to the youngers, if you did a whole lot of pornography, if you did that, what happened was you probably abandoned a whole bunch of hobbies and other things that brought fulfillment to you in your life. It's almost like it's inherent. So you probably dropped something that you used to like. I don't know, maybe playing an instrument, maybe running, maybe basketball. But you probably dropped something. And so now's a good time to bring that back, to rekindle that, because that's something that brings a fire to you. That's something that excites you. And you need to be excited in this process. This is not a process to be sad about, in fact. This is a process where we need all your resources, and we need you to be regulated in that green area. We need you to be happy. We need you to be happy. There's nothing to be sad about in this process. And that's one of the reasons why the counting of the days, rinse and repeat, and fighting it out, and then, relapsing and going in circles, it doesn't work, because that's a loop of despair. But yeah, this process should be an exciting process for you, and you should have fun with it. And actually, you really should have fun. And actually, once you get some authority, it really does get fun a little bit. I would caution you. Until you have like 2 years of sobriety before you think that you got this, because you don't have this. And I would also remind you, personal for me, I don't hear it so much out there, but I do hear it for me. So my second year of sobriety was actually tougher than my first year. Imagine that. The second year was tougher than the first year. Now, obviously, if it was the second year, it was clean. Yeah, it was clean, but it was tougher. So this business about how you're going to make this journey easy is crazy, because I just been saying my second year was toughest. So if I wasn't ready for it, I would have fell. Is kind of what I'm saying in code. I mean, I get all these weird thoughts out of nowhere, triggers out of nowhere. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even like physiologically triggered, but I'm mentally triggered. I'm like, yeah, that would be, my mind saying, yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Just out of the blue, yeah, that would be a good idea. Fortunately, my higher self knew that it wasn't a good idea. So again, this is a journey, and this is work, and I'm going to say it until I can't say it anymore, but it is work, and it's not an easy ride, and you need to do these things on a daily, on purpose. on purpose. See, that's why the randomness goes away. There's no reason for random. You need to have a daily schedule. This is going to guide you. Your schedule is your boundaries, my friend. We don't want you to overeat, obviously, because see, what people want to do sometimes is they want to replace one habit for another. So we don't want eating to, we don't want to bring in any new bad habits. Tell the truth fast when you slip. Remember, we don't relapse around here. If we are in the game of getting better, there's no such thing as relapse. You only slip. We'll talk about that in more depth later. As I said, when you wake up every day, you wake up with a purpose. Go to sleep earlier. These are things that will help you. Rest is important. Rest is important. Because the more energized you are, the better your quality of decisions that you make, which is interesting that decision was that first thing. So again, sometimes using a 15-minute timer before making a decision. Again, keeping your door open, keeping your screens in front of people's faces. See, if you take out the opportunity, you don't have the oxygen for toxicity. So if you keep the door open, you shut it down. Which, by the way, this is a weird thing that has been shared with me over the time. I've had people repetitively, one person, it was adult, he went to a country where they didn't have internet access, long-term porn user, went there for like months, no big deal. I've had kids that they go to like retreats where there's no phone for like a month, no problem. So, where did I lose my place? Access. Somewhere along the line, I lost my place on access. Yeah, eliminating access and keeping your door open. Because when the opportunity doesn't exist, the toxicity can't come in. This here, we talked about it last time. It's basically put yourself out in the open and do your homework. A lot of times, people shut the door and they act like they're doing homework. You ain't doing homework. Turn the volume off of stuff sometimes and break the trance. Oh, yeah, put on the uniform. Put on the uniform because some clothes have a way of positioning your mind right so that you are right. And I'm not trying to be funny, but you can't see my bottoms and I could actually have pajamas on right now. And I could actually have no shoes on right now. But quite frankly, I don't have that. I have dress shoes on and I have dress pants on. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's the uniform. I got dressed to have a conversation with you. If I was in my other clothes, then I'd be in a lounge position. That's pretty self-explanatory. Move. Come up with new ways of moving. And then, look, you got to have a support plan. Now, this is something where I told you before, if I was you, I wouldn't listen to this or watch this or anything to do with this. I'd have a notebook. That's what I would do. I wouldn't be able to look at anything without a notebook, man. I'm telling you now. Gotta have a notebook. No need to work without a notebook because there's something I just saw that I want you to write down. Well, write everything down. So as you look at this slide here, I found this slide interesting the more that I looked at it. And so this is some real juice on this particular slide, actually. And so one of the things that makes it unrandom, and this is one of the things that's been missing on that goofy strategy that many people have out there, is that this is meat. When something happens, instead of me just sitting there like a clown, walk into a room where other people are, where adults are. I looked at this one here. Ask somebody to hold your phone for an hour. And I don't make these slides. I have an assistant that makes many of these slides. I tell them what they want, what I want in it. And some of them aren't exactly the way that I want them. So when I first looked at this just a second ago, ask somebody to hold your phone for you, that was almost like a gimmick. And in a way, some people, that's their only strategy. And that's really terrible for it. That's your only strategy. But it can be a good strategy. And the reason why I bring this up is they actually have devices that will lock your phone for an hour and you can't get into it. I would never get one of those for fear that it'd get locked and I can't get back into it ever. But what happens is when you don't have that phone for an hour, this here forces you to have the muscle of not having the phone in your hand for an hour. And since I talk about it over and over again, the real thing that happens here, and I'll repeat it over and over again, is there's a bunch of micro changes that you make. And the micro changes that you make, they stand up and cause a macro change. And what happens is through a bunch of macro changes, they ultimately equal a change in your identity and a change in your brain and a change in how you think and a change in your behavior, which ultimately lead to transformation. So it's micro changes, micro decisions that a bunch of them add up and they create a macro change in a specific area. There's probably, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 macro areas that need to be addressed. You could categorize and make it 10. I'm in the mode, so I can't think about exactly how many there are, but consider it about 100 different things, and it's about 10 or 20 macro things that need to change. And out of that, they change your identity. And out of that identity shift, then you can actually have a transformation. And the problem that most people have is they're trying to make a macro change without doing the little changes underneath that would make the macro change. And then they think it's just one macro change that they need to make, when in fact it's a multitude of macro changes that need to be made. Again, device controls, you've heard all of that. Hate to break the bad news to you folks. Really do. Hate to break the bad news to you. I hate to do this to you. Okay, so gaming and heavy duty playing on games is known to prolong people's porn habits, actually. And the reason being is because gaming meets some of the same needs that pornography meets. It just doesn't meet them in as much of a fortified manner. And so it's a complicated matter because on the one hand, it's better for you to game than to do porn. But on the other hand, as long as you game, the lingering background work that needs to be done sometimes isn't done. So at worst, at total worst, if you decide to keep gaming in your life, it really needs to be down to a minimum. And so, maybe in that half-hour range, because it is setting you back. That's one thing to know about gaming. The second thing to know about gaming is that a lot of sexual images are in the games. So that's an area where, just like I was talking about with those movies where you turn it off, you have to make a decision that I'm not going to look at those games. And the thing is that, again, this is a micro area. So if you don't believe that gaming produces and fulfills needs like pornography, and you're going to sit there and tell me, oh, I know how it sounds. Oh, he's trying to get me to. No, I'm trying to tell you what you need to know so that you're free. And gaming meets needs. So let's talk about the needs gaming meets. Gaming meets the need of connection, because you connect with people when you game, don't you? Gaming meets the need for achievement that you have inside yourself, because you tend to achieve or try to achieve, right? Gaming meets the need for growth, because you tend to try to do better than you did last time, correct? Yep. Gaming makes you feel like you accomplished something, right? Gaming also produces dopamine, because you get rewarded for doing good, right? So you're getting stuff from that. And I've already established that pornography use is an intimacy disorder, so you want to connect. So you see, you're getting needs met from gaming. And the point that I'm making is, how do you get healthy? You get healthy by meeting your needs in a healthy manner, in an elegant manner. And for you, gaming is not going to be your friend. For you, social media is not going to be your friend. And as long as you want to convince yourself that you need a whole bunch, I didn't say anything about getting off of social media. That's not what I said. I just said, how much time do you spend on it? And what kind of boundaries do you have when you're on it? Are you looking at girls that you shouldn't be looking at? Are you following people that you shouldn't be looking at? A lot of it has to do with what you're doing there. So if it's a sexualized experience, it's got to go. And your worst self is going to convince you that you need to play gaming, and your worst side is going to convince you that you need to be on social media, and your worst side is going to convince you that I don't know what I'm talking about, and that it doesn't matter, and you can use all the other techniques. Maybe you can. Because, see, once you get, the neat thing is, what I can also tell you is, once you get to a certain point, it doesn't matter whether you game or not. Social media is not an ill to me. I could spend all day on social media. It doesn't have the same effect as it did when I had a pornified mind. Gaming for a couple hours doesn't have the same effect as it would if I was in my addiction. So, the choice is yours. What I'm telling you is that you need to minimize it as much as possible, because that's an area that participates and it circulates your loop. And from your own behavior what the deal is. You already know that you bounce from gaming to porn to porn to gaming, porn to gaming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You already know that. That's why. And by the way, since we're talking about this, here's another area for the guys that are older. You got to cut out dating sites, my friend, because dating sites are not, they're just like social media. There's a whole lot of fantasy that's going on. All you're doing is fantasizing. And then that's even worse, because you do have a potential that you might be able to go on a date with the people you're fantasizing about. So it makes it like doubly worse. And again, coming back to the original thing, the reason why you need to get off of the dating site is because, see, people that do porn, they don't have any skills in talking to women. They don't have the skills that it takes to meet a woman, to talk to her, to exchange phone numbers, and then to call her back, make her laugh and giggle and create some type of rapport, and then build a relationship from there. They don't know how to do that. That's why they need a dating site. And see, part of you learning how to do that, it's going to cause certain resources in and of yourself to expand. And that expansion is, in effect, growth. So again, as we go through this journey, and we talked about triggers, and that's all nice and dandy, but you have to develop a greater awareness of triggers, because really this journey, as I said, it's a journey of deliberateness, and it's a journey of consciousness. And that's not the journey that you've been on. You've been on a journey of unconsciousness and a journey of randomness. So if you take a look at those slides there, you'll see that this slide really is about becoming aware of what the trigger is, and really articulating what the trigger is. Because, see, there's a difference in triggers, and just like there's a difference in triggers, there's also a difference in response to the trigger. And once again, like I said, mature individuals respond and animals react. And again, people that don't know anything about maturity will always talk about, you reacted wrong. Yeah, you reacted wrong. No, mature individuals respond. Animals react. And a lot of times things go wrong when people react versus respond. So one of the things that I found is that, like, if you rate the urge, that really helps you, because that's part of the awareness process. Because there's a different strategy for a level 10 urge versus a level 1 urge. And sometimes just understanding what the urge, a level 10, you better run. You better, that's time to pick up the whole toolbox. Level 1, it might be time to pick up one tool. So again, I think you can read those faster than I can talk about them, but you need to become aware of your triggers and have a good response to them. And a lot of them is this big word here, lie. A lot of the triggers are a result of lies. Some faith resets. A lot of times people that are Christians, they're going to sit here telling me how turned off they are about this program, and how I'm not giving them all these scriptures, and how this isn't this or this isn't that. Well, when that person was doing all that porn, they wasn't doing all that praising of the Lord. They wasn't doing all that stuff. They wasn't quoting scriptures while they was doing PMO, okay? So, that's nice and dandy to try to throw that at me. But no, I'm talking about science. I'm talking about, you can't throw scriptures when if you broke your leg in half like I broke my leg in half several years ago where I could see the inside. If you break your leg in half, sir, the only thing Scripture is going to do, and the only thing prayer is going to do, is help the ambulance get there faster. You need to go to a doctor, and you need a certain protocol of help. And I'm telling you for the 500th time, if you don't want to do porn, 900 times out of 998 times, the only way it happens is through recovery. There are people that they can actually pray, and they're at the right point in life where they're going to do all the growth stuff without knowing it, and that's going to cause their identity shift without knowing it, and then they're all of a sudden going to get better. But I just finished telling you that's like 1 out of 100,000. And if you want to have a strategy that's 1 out of 100,000, once again, I can't say it any other way. Whatever pain you experience, however bad it is for you, whatever you destroy in your life, and I don't mean it in a fun way, but I mean it in a truth way, you deserve it. If you're not going to sit there and do certain right things that are going to make your life better because you've been told them, if you don't do them, then you probably deserve what it is you get. And one of the reasons that I get is because of the tricks that your mind wants to play on you. And so it wants to figure out a way without you knowing it so that you can stay where you are. So one of the easiest ways to stay where you are, one of the easiest tricks your mind can play on you is if your mind can get you to reject what it is I'm saying. If you reject everything I'm saying, then you don't have to do any of the hard work that's going to make the changes, that's going to cause you to make the macro changes that ultimately change your identity, which ultimately change your habit. Art. This is stuff that really touches your souls. Your creativity has to come out in real life. The funny thing that I know, and I've had an opportunity to have talked to numbers of addicts over the years, is that they're pretty creative in hiding their pornography. They're pretty creative in finding pornography. They're pretty creative in everything that comes to their pornography use. In fact, sometimes I talk to people and say, well, you need to get creative about how you can, do certain things. And they often tell me, I'm not really creative. And I got news for you. You can't do porn without being creative. It's one of those things that it doesn't, by its nature, the creativity comes out some kind of way. Does it come out in how you store it? Does it come out in how you hide it? Does it come out in how you find it? Does it come out on how you view it? I don't know. But it comes out only for that. And what I'm inviting you to do is bring creativity back into your everyday life. We're almost done. Yeah, we're almost done. So what do you do if porn shows up? Because I talk about once you get better at dealing with life, I talked about this one before, but I'm going to talk about it again. But once you get better at managing your life and really when you get off porn, you're going to find that you have sowed a bunch of seeds. You've done a bunch of stuff. You have lived a toxic life out there, and it's left some traces back to you. And so porn is going to show up. It's going to show up from a friend sending it to you thinking he thinks it's funny. It's going to show up in your email box because somebody thinks it's funny. It's going to show up from a site that you went to a long time ago. Or it may just show up randomly because somebody doesn't have anything better to do than to send porn to somebody. So what do? regardless of where you are in your journey, you do. It's real simple. You ever had it's you got to get friendly with that button right there, my friend. You gotta get really acclimated with that button right there. That X has got to be your buddy, my friend. Gotta get better. That's got to be your buddy. See ya. Don't want to be ya. You got to get fluent. Got to be able to hit that button with your eyes closed. That's what you need to do. When it comes up, you just hit the X button. None of this. Oh, my streak's done. Oh, no. Okay. I'm not gonna waste any of your time on this one today. This is all you do. That right there. That's it. That's what you do. Isolation becomes a habit, and secrecy lives in isolation, and that's why you want to change your life. You want to connect with people because isolation is part of the habit. In fact, one of the things that I did in my early days was because I knew this. See, I understood what the macros was, and I went and I attacked those macro habits so that I could have the transformation. I got it. And isolation is a big deal. And what did I do on purpose? Is I went out on a quest to deal with that. And I actually lived in a senior neighborhood at the time, and it was in a warm climate, so people were out all the time. So all I would have to do is just go out walking. And there was 1,000 people in that neighborhood. I lived there for a couple of years, so I didn't know the whole 1,000. So by default, just doing that walk, I would have met somebody that I didn't know. And I just stopped. And I had a goal every day, meet 2 new people. And that built that muscle of connection. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And it's about having a different vision of yourself. Look at these components: purpose-driven, emotionally intelligent, disciplined, resilient, compassion. These are traits that show up as you grow. And as I said, your sense of justice, it increases like you've never seen before. And this is something I'm going to share with you. Some of when I share the negative stuff about this behavior, it's not to scare you, but it's that at some sense, and we live in a world that's very distrusting, and our brains are wired to be distrusting, and we need to see some evidence sometime. And so some of what I do on purpose is to give you some evidence so that you can change. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking about if somebody, we're not talking about pornography, we're talking about smoking, which is a habit that kills 400,000 people a year. And everybody knows it's bad before they even do it. And everybody knows it's wrong for them, for their health wise. But yet they continue to do it. And it's actually one of the top addictions to beat. It's a toughie. Because it's actually like 100 habits that are mixed into one habit. But I was thinking if when you were a kid, if your mom took you and made you sit in a hospital ward where people were suffering from smoking related injuries, and your mom left you there for say 12 hours, and you even had to eat 2 meals there, you couldn't leave that floor, and you just had to be exposed to like a floor. I have a good imagination. Let's say it was a floor of say 200 people on it, and that's what you were exposed to for 12 hours. I can guarantee you you probably wouldn't be a smoker. Now, I know there'd be somebody, I didn't want to test it. I wouldn't test it. I wouldn't test it. I guarantee you there'd be somebody like that. And somehow they would forget what they saw. But most people wouldn't. And that's what I'm talking about. When you raise your awareness, it makes it easier to go through this process, because a lot of what's going on is the cognitive distortion, which is causing you to think that you're doing something when you aren't, and to cause you to think that what it is you're doing isn't that bad. So the more realistic about what it is that you're doing, the better chance you have at moving. And the opposite that they say, like I just finished saying, the opposite of addiction is connection. And so you may say, oh, I got a lot of friends. I know a whole lot of people. That's nice. But see, there's a difference between knowing people and actually connecting with people. So the opposite of addiction is connection. So if you deliberately make it your business to actually connect with healthy people, that's a component that makes a tremendous difference in your experience. Hopefully you can relate to something that we talked about today. And again, write it down. Your friend in this process is your notebook. It really is. Have your digital boundaries. And these are some questions for personal transformation. I don't know if you asked this from last time. If you don't have a big enough why, it won't work. I told you my why. My why was, I wanted to get better so I can help people. And I was intolerant of being a hypocrite, so therefore I had to get better. And I got passionate about it. What's your why? If your why is big enough, you'll go through. And the why has to be a pure why too, because the why, it although as you heard in my case, it was for me to be for others. It can't be specifically for somebody else. You can't have your girlfriend or your wife be your why. They can be part of your why, but they can't be your total why. That's a whole science in and of itself. You have to have a decent why, a why that's pure. Put up some boundaries, man. This process of recovery is like I said, it's a daily process. So it's like every day, put up more boundaries. It's like every day, put up more boundaries. It's just like when I started this session out. And the weird thing about this session, which it's different from the way I do things, which is funny. I guess all these things happen so that I can share them with you. Usually, when I start the day out, because I'm a morning person, so usually I do a bunch of stuff before I do the taping. And I'd like to have the best energy that I possibly can have. So today, deliberately, I didn't do any stuff. And then, lo and behold, I get this message about updating the camera. See, if I would have held to my first boundary, I would have ignored. I wouldn't have just tested it. I would have ignored that until I was finished with what I was doing. Because, it took about an hour away. And for me, when I'm ready to talk, it's like a bottle, man. I want it to release. So if I don't talk, it's just as well as if I talk energy-wise. The energy is just going to go. So again, do an honest assessment. I mean, it's easy to look at that chart that I did. Where do you find yourself? Because that's the tool. See, as long as it's that 365, 3600, that's mine. This is yours. How many have you done? And that's you going to that hospital room and looking at and seeing how dangerous smoking is, such that you don't. Because if you saw how dangerous this is, you probably wouldn't do it. If you saw that it destroys, if you saw everything that it destroys, if you saw how it's going to destroy your future if you don't do anything about it, that will give you the leverage. And the way that you see how it would destroy your future is by availing yourself to people that have been there, like some of those support groups, Sex Anonymous, Porn Users Anonymous, et cetera, those kinds of things. Here's a piece of homework for you today, if you choose. Why don't you write a letter to yourself and just reflect? Just put yourself in a position for a moment and be a person who is porn free in your imagination. You got a good imagination because you fantasize. So I know you got a good imagination. You just need to learn how to use that imagination. So why don't you write a letter about what your life would look like without porn? There's a place that you're going to put this letter. And if you want to be ambitious, why don't you get yourself a notebook, a folder type notebook. Get yourself a notebook and get yourself a folder to put stuff in, you know, one of those folders that open and it has two pockets on the side, because there's stuff that I want you to put in it. It's actually called a first aid kit. We're going to talk about it later. But the first aid kit has all kinds of stuff. It has all kinds of positive stuff that you're going to put in there, like this letter, number 4 there, and number 1, what is your why. So once you build this first aid kit that I'm talking about, those days that you feel tempted, you can go into your first aid kit and you can see what you wrote in your handwriting. And see, that brings the triggers down and that gives you the strength to carry on further. But see, before we even started this process, you didn't have any of that. And see, that's why they count. I'm going to count days. That's why that stuff doesn't work, man. And I think I am done. How about that? That's it. Yep. So nice, so nice, so nice. So there you are. I think you got your homework. Write a letter to yourself and write 5 new boundaries that you can put in place this week. And then any of the other homework that you haven't done. Because it's not that somebody's trying to make you do something. All the homework does is it puts you in that hospital room so that you can see what's going on. Because the way the mind works is all the bad stuff that goes on in your life, the way it goes on is your mind cons you into not realizing what it really is. And so when you begin to deliberately, intentionally, on purpose, be totally honest with yourself, that doesn't happen anymore. And it's through that being honest that you take effective actions that help you sustain. And they help you make the macro changes by making a bunch of mini changes so that you can ultimately have transformation. And so, when I was taking my shower today, thinking about this before I had that technical difficulty, one of the things that I was thinking about was transformation. And so I keep talking about that word transformation, and I thought about a real good picture of transformation. And so Non-transformation is this. You change your clothes every day, put on a different clothes, put this on different, put that on different, and then tomorrow you change your clothes again. And the day after that, you change your clothes again. That's changing your clothes, right? But transformation, and what I'm talking about for you, is changing your wardrobe. You see the difference? You could change your clothes all day long. But if you change your wardrobe, that's a transformation. And that's what we're talking about, transformation. So thanks for being here. Thank you. Maybe your kids down the road are thanking you. Because you did grow up. That was those are some serious tools if you use them. I use them every day. I add to them. And I use them unconsciously because I've used them so much. And that's what we need to get you to do. You need to do all of the wonderful things about recovery over and over and over again so that they add up and become something that you do unconsciously. So I can't wait till the next time that we meet. I'm trying to see what I'm going to do next time. The next time we meet, we're going to talk some more about tools. We'll give you some more tools that will help you called Recovery Capital. So I can't wait till it happens. See you next time. Drive with care and walk with caution meanwhile. God bless you.